So what happened then? You mentioned that you lost your dad when you were 6. And what happened? Did you have a relationship with your mother? How did all that pan out? What's kind of the phase 2 or chapter 2 of your story?
At that point, when I was 6, my mother was not in my life yet. So I was told that my mother was dead, that she passed away when I was born. And so when my dad died at 6, I pretty much thought I was an orphan.
Was what you talked about was your mom having had breast cancer and the way that it was treated and the way that it was not necessarily spoken about and um, how you encountered that.
First, my background, I'm Caribbean, and I come from also a very religious family. And in those two things, that means that you kind of keep your business, and you don't really talk about it, including with your own kids, and that you just pray about it and you leave it there.
I thought I was living with his parents. So my father's parent, my grandparents took over as my legal guardians when he passed when I was 6. I had no knowledge of my mom and lived with them, and they were grieving heavy. That was their firstborn son, and he had two sisters that lived right next door. We all lived sort of in this little triangle. And so from there, they all rallied around me and took care of me in the most beautiful way.
And while I do believe that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen, I do think you've got to talk about some things. So for me, as I shared in the article, my mother just told me she had to have a procedure. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to drive you to the hospital for this procedure. But she wouldn't tell me what the procedure was. And I'm literally sitting outside a hospital, and my mother is having a lumpectomy. I have no idea.
I had 7 first cousins, 2 aunts, and we I had a beautiful childhood. Of course, I miss my dad. Of course, it was like, oh, I don't have parents, and there were moments where, of course, that was very sad, right? To think you have no parents, but to be surrounded by people that just loved me, loved on me so hard. It was beautiful.
Sitting in my car waiting for her to have a procedure that I don't know what the procedure is. And I'm calling around. I actually wind up calling one of her sisters in the Caribbean because I said maybe she might know. And that's how I finally found out that my mother was upstairs. My mother has breast cancer. And so I go into the hospital, I use her name, and I finally find her, and we never talk about it.
Mm.
She's like, we will not use the C word. God's got me. And that's it. That is it. That's the whole conversation. There's no follow up. That's not the way it goes.
Yeah.
I found out when I was 18 that my mother was alive. And that's when I started a relationship with her. But my childhood, my mom and wasn't there.
Was that their agreement?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think, when he adopted me, it was that, she gave up her parental rights and she wasn't going to be a part of my life.
Fast forward a few years later, my mother's starting to have difficulties walking. And even then, I'm going, Mom, why can't you walk? Have you gone to the doctor? And she says, well, my doctor's taken blood work, which I thought was kind of crazy because if you can't walk, I would think there would be other testing that might be needed.
But, he did communicate the address, where we would be, things like that. And my mom had a boyfriend for about 10 years who really pushed her to go find me.
We have to talk.
Yeah.
I think that and I don't want to, I don't know if it's shame. I don't know if it's things that are considered private, and I'm air quoting for
Mm-hmm.
those who are listening to the audio. But we have to talk. We have to talk more. And I think that this is about health,
Yeah.
but it's also about all the things
Yeah.
that we are choosing not to talk about. And I
Mm-hmm.
know that in my life, as a mother and as a grandmother, I'm allowing that to stay with my parents.
She was a corporate girl. She had it going on. I'm telling you. She was so smart. so smart, and she had this big time job when I met her, but she was fun. She entertained clients and she did all this. And when I came around, I was thinking, oh, it's time to cut all this off. You need to be a mom. You have not been a mom. And
You're like, no, got a new
and
identity
she
for
was
you,
like,
miss.
no.
I call myself the emancipation coach because I think we've got to be emancipated from the strong Black woman or the strong woman who keeps it all in and,
Yes, as a sign of
silently.
strength.
Yeah. And really what it is it's silent trauma.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that, yes, we don't, you do need to pick your tribe and who you share with. So you have the right energy around you.
Well, before my mom passed away and we got a cancer diagnosis that gave us time to like talk through all this. And so I kind of realized what I was doing because when we talked through it, we both laughed. She said, when you came around, I was not ready to give up what I was doing. And she was like, you were this mirror of accountability that just got placed in front of my face. And she was like, I was not having it. And we both just laughed because she said, I was trying to have a good time and you were looking for a mom. And I was like, and so we struggled with that for years.
If nothing else, it is a valuable teaching opportunity for you to give your daughters, especially. That's why I kept my daughter as part of my journey, not in some ways to weigh her down, but to make sure you love your parents. So you want to know and you're going to support them, and not knowing doesn't protect them. So let's just get that out there. Um, but so that she knows how to make the right choices for herself as well. So that's why I had to be open about mine. And that was the first time I was open. I too had gone through other health issues and kept it quiet based on my upbringing of being strong and quiet and private and just leave it on the altar. And that's only God needs to know your business.
What did she do with that? What did she do with that? The tension between her being kind of on the path of her life, whatever that looked like, partying, or maybe it was like whatever it was, and then you stepping forward with the needs that a young woman has from her mother. What did that look like?
It was back and forth. The funny thing was sometimes I would feel her leaning into the role and she would try to swoop in and do mom things and, um, I was in school at the time and had lots of girlfriends, and she would take us out. And she's paying for everyone's meal and she's wanting to, make sure everyone's taken care of. And then other times I would be like, hey, I need to buy this book, or I just got a flat tire. And she's like, figure it out. And I would get really frustrated because I was like, wait, okay, she would pull me in and push me back, pull me in and push me back. And I didn't realize till later that her mom died when she was 4.